Anywho, what we're going to talk about today is...
Before that, let me just give a quick update. Pistons did just lose to the Wizards tonight, 116-113. Killian got an offensive rebound with like 2 seconds left. I think heaved one up and missed at the buzzer. So,
cool.
It was a close game. Again, competitive. That's all we wanted to ask.
Probably unguarded.
Probably heaved it up.
Oh boy!
And if you put you bet against them -3.5, you're not happy with yourself right now.
It doesn't change the league's worst shooting percentages from Killian, but as long as he's not shooting, I'm not.
I
too
can't
worried
wait
about
till
it.
we get to the Wednesday parlay.
Well, that's not today. That's not the parlay I did today.
Oh.
I already lost that one because of the stinking Pistons. Whatever. Anyways, we're going to get into some wide receiver rankings.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't know how this is going to go. Ryan, you have your rankings. What I did is I put on the paper here was Pro Football Focus's wide receiver rankings heading into the NFL Combine. Now, this is pre-Combine because things can change, I think, especially with that type of specialty position, or what do they call it? Not a specialty position.
It's an athletic position.
Yeah.
I mean, there's numbers to usually back it up.
Yeah, so the numbers, someone could just go blow absolutely smoke a can't think
40-yard dash.
A 40-yard dash, and that too. That could really ruin their draft status.
Or help it. Depends on how relaxed they get.
That's true. So, like, Ryan, where do you want to go? Do you just want to go with your list? Or you want to kind of dissect what they do here and then tell them where they're wrong? Like, what do you want to do?
Well, I think we chose wide receiver for a reason, right? Wide receiver is just jam-packed with talent every single year at this point. We know that there's going to be some misses. There's going to be probably some superstars out of this group. But it's really difficult to separate the top 5 or even 6 guys, in my opinion. It might be different than most years. Most years, you think I think a couple of years ago there was. I shouldn't even bring up names, but there were like 3 guys. Jerry Jeudy was one of them. Cowboys selected one of them, but there was
CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, CeeDee Lamb in that group. There was and Justin Jefferson. Yeah, those were like the people that. Justin Jefferson was like the odd man out as like maybe the 4th or 5th best wide receiver in all these rankings, and yet he has been absolutely dominant in the NFL for the first 2 years. And I think we could be looking at a situation like this. And so I guess the purpose of this is just to go through the wide receivers because it's a need for the Lions specifically.
Yeah.
And I want to just show like how these wide receiver rankings from the PFF could possibly be completely different from mine. That's a little foreshadowing.
And I think Pro Football Focus is a tough one because they look at analytics that other people don't. Yeah. And they take it as gospel when they even probably don't believe themselves. You know what I mean? You see that a lot of times when someone that actually had a terrible game like had the best Pro Football Focus rating at their position that week. It blows your mind, but it happens. So you brought up the first 5. I'm actually going to go through Pro Football Focus's top 5.
Let's do it, yeah.
And we can kind of talk about it. Some from there, whether you're surprised or not. So their number 1 is Drake London out of USC. And they have him as the top overall, or 10th overall prospect and on their big board. Moving down to Ohio State, you got Garrett Wilson, where they have him at number 2, but 13th overall on their big board. So it's not that big of a difference when you compare the two. Where would you go on those two?
So let's just to give context, Drake London number 1 for PFF ranking, the big board rankings, number 10, number 13, third is number 17, 19, 29, 30. So like there's 5 guys within the top 30 picks is kind of what they're predicting here.
Well, 6 if you can include Sky Moore.
Oh yeah, there you go. Which Sky Moore in the top 30?
That blew my mind.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie.
Ballsy. I don't know. Not here, but so their first 2, Drake London, Garrett Wilson. I have one of those as my number 2 as well, is Garrett Wilson. He is my number 2. I could not disagree more with Drake London, and it's worth bringing up PFF with the analytics side of things. Drake London is ranked number 1 in every single category you could think of for contested catch rate, or just balls, 50-50 balls to go up and get it. Drake London dominated last year in college football, and he did it in like 8 games because he got injured and ruined his season at that point. But his numbers look pretty incredible. I just don't see it. I don't see the athleticism. In my rankings, I actually have him ranked number 7 in my wide receivers.
Okay.
Which just shows the difference. And maybe I'm wrong and maybe they're wrong, but that's how close a lot of these comparisons are for the wide receiver.
So the Pro Football Focus's list winds out the top 5 with Jameson Williams out of Alabama, Chris Olave out of Ohio State, and Treylon Burks out of Arkansas. Treylon Burks is an interesting name to me because he seems to kind of fit the Deebo Samuel mold. That I feel like if he didn't look as good as he did in the playoffs and down the stretch there for 49ers, I wonder if it's just like the comparison is making him more valuable than he actually put up in college football, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he's a tough one to rate because a lot of his catches came on like bubble screens that he just turned into run after catch. So that's where the Deebo Samuel comparison comes in. He ran a lot of reverses and was extremely
and I'm sure,
effective.
Like, that type of player, their analytic side of a Pro Football Focus, they look at yards after catch. I'm sure is a big key when they're grading all overall wide receivers. That might have something to do with why he is sneaking into the top 5.
But he's also a giant human being. He's going to probably run a 4.3 40. He's huge. He's big, strong. He looks like the dude out of Seattle Seahawks wide receiver.
DK Metcalf.
Yeah, DK Metcalf. So people are comparing him to
better hair than
DK.
DK Metcalf?
Yeah, I think so.
Good.
Everyone does.
Does he have a nose ring like DK Metcalf?
Probably. He's
Not
a bull, yeah. No, I don't think so.
All right, good.
No, but he's compared to that, and then he's also the comparisons are like what you said with Deebo Samuel. So he has the comps are what kind of drives him up, I think. But also he was by far the highest usage wide receiver out of Arkansas, which means that defenses would scheme around this guy, and he still dominated the college football scene. So my number 1 is actually Treylon Burks.
Really?
Because I think the upside and how you use him in an offense can be either way. You can either use him as a classic X wide receiver on the sideline, throw it deep, and you'll beat guys deep. He's a great contested catch guy. He's got the biggest hands in the draft out of wide receivers, I think. So big, strong, great blocker. So he does everything right, and then you can also get him involved in the creative short game like the reverses and speed and space type approach.
Based on like the mock drafts that I've been reading, it feels like he's the one that we're going to miss out on because the Rams went on the playoff run. You know what I mean?
I think so. There's a good
it
chance.
just seems like that's the one that's going to really hurt. It's either going to be him or like a Nakobe Dean. It's like, dang, that's why we wanted the Rams to lose, even though I was rooting for them the way I did. All right, so you got Treylon Burks as your number 1. Where do you have Jameson Williams?
I have Jameson Williams number 4. So I'll just give you my top 5 real quick. Number 1, Treylon Burks. Number 2, Garrett Wilson. Number 3, Chris Olave. 4, Jameson Williams. And number 5. Oh, where's my number 5? Did I skip number 5?
George Pickens.
I got to go to number 6 then. David Bell.
David Bell.
Yeah.
So they have David Bell all the way down to 13.
Yeah.
And I thought that one was very interesting. And I was actually, so like the mock draft simulator that I messed around with, they originally had him, I want to say, as the top 40 overall prospect. And then last night when I was doing it, they switched it to be like 56. And they actually moved Jahan Dotson ahead of him.
Yeah.
And that really surprised me.
Those two are really close to me. They're 5 and 6 in my list. But they're pretty different.
Like that's where I'm like, I guess I don't know.
So I think the reason I've got David Bell ranked so much higher than some of these guys is I think he has an underrated NFL wide receiver body. He's 6'2". Which means he has the size that like a Garrett Wilson would have.
Yep.
He's got the strength. If you see somebody who's like 6'1", 6'2", and they're skinny as a rail, they say, well, good height, good length, but they need to put on some muscle. Like nobody's saying that about David Bell. He's a strong dude.
He's already developed for sure.
Absolutely. And maybe he doesn't have elite speed. He doesn't have elite quickness, but I think his route running ability, his ability to feel the space and just be where he needs to be, also mixed with that kind of size, toughness, and strength, I think he's a way underrated commodity in the NFL because I think he's game ready right away. And again, he's one of those high usage rates guys also which to me tells you that he beats defenses when they're scheming around him.
Okay.
I think that goes a long way. That means that he's not only going up against the best corner, but the safety shaded his way, and that means he has to navigate through getting all those looks.
And his reads are good.
Yes, exactly.
His read options are good. Route options, I guess, is the better. Is that the
and he goes and gets the ball. He's a really good contested catch guy again. So I think, to me, the more balanced of a wide receiver you can be, where you have speed, you have yak ability like he does. Clearly, he breaks a ton of tackles too. Also contested catch, also maybe a slot guy, maybe outside. The more you can do, the higher value you are in my book.
Yeah, I just got an alert on my phone, and he just scored again against Michigan State. I don't know if that must be old, but he just scored again.
He just did, yeah.
He's still doing it against them. No, I mean, that was the game that really stood out to me, and obviously I didn't sit and watch Purdue games a lot, but what he did against Michigan State was so impressive because they were scheming against him because he was their only weapon. And look, I mean, doing what he did against Michigan State isn't that impressive because Michigan State was like one of the worst, if not the worst, pass defense in the country. But, man, he just looked like it. He looks like he's an NFL guy ready to go.
Oh,
and,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
He's the one that screams like a Jamar Jefferson. Jamar Jefferson? Which one?
Justin Jefferson.
Jamar Jefferson's on the lines.
Yep.
That's where Justin Jefferson, that could be the 5th or 6th guy drafted, but have the best impact for the first 4 years of his career. That's the one that really stands out to me because I think he's ready, and he does things in a different way. I don't know if they like our styles are the same, but that's just who I just think he could be the most productive guy. If you're not careful, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what's really shocking when I saw him at all the way down to 13 on Pro Football Focus.
I think it's actually a good comp. He is, to me, he's Justin Jefferson without the elite athletic ability, and so maybe that's the difference. But so instead of averaging 1,400 yards, he's a 900 to 1,000 yard guy who still catches touchdowns. Like, we'll take that, especially if you're building a wide receiver corps around him and other people.
So you ended with David Bell. How far did your list go?
I mean, I've got a top 10 for you. You want me to just keep going?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, number 6. Well, I guess so. My number 5 and 6 were different, so my numbers are off here. But I have Jahan Dodson after that. I think his athletic ability, explosion, he's a little undersized. I think he's like 5'10 or 5'11", 185 pounds or so. But he does have that next level ability of making guys miss, beating somebody on a route, but has enough physical ability that he's not just going to be over the middle type of guy. After that, I actually do have Drake London. There is something to be said about a contested catch, go up and get it, bail out your quarterback type of athlete. I don't think he will ever be the guy to get open. I don't think he's even that smart or a good route runner, but he does have an elite ability to catch a ball he shouldn't catch.
So Kenny Galladay 2.0.
I think Kenny Galladay is more of an athlete than him.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think he's maybe the comps that are out there, the Notre Dame guy that's with the Steelers right now. Claypool, yes. Chase Claypool. I think he's a Claypool type that without the speed, but he's the big body and maybe a better contested catch. Good blocker, too. He's really physical. Amon-Ra St. Brown and him have similar play style, but I think quick St. Brown, the complete opposite. There's the quick twitch and then the long body. But
all right.
After that, I'm just rambling at this point.
So Drake London was number 7.
Yes, and then I have George Pickens, wide receiver out of Georgia. I think he's got the speed. I don't know how much he really does in the mid-range and underneath, but he will be a valuable asset on somebody's team pushing the ball long, and he can go up and get the ball. So good hands. I think underrated speed. You'll see in his 40 time might go a long way for him at the combine.
Yeah, he'll be an interesting one. Is he? I'm curious at what he's gonna do. Still fighting the injury, coming back from it. I'm curious if he's gonna not do certain things. But
and then I have Christian Watson, and then Sky Moore.
So you have Sky Moore at number 10.
Yeah.
And then who was it?
Christian Watson, number 9. I think I just see him fitting in with so many different teams. He is the wide receiver out of North Dakota State. I like him. I like the way he runs. I think he's dynamic. He is he almost reminds me of Treylon Burks with his ability to run end rounds and look like a running back as he's running, but with top end speed.
It's going to be a weird, like when you look at it from a Lions perspective, is 3's too high to take a wide receiver, in my opinion, when you look at this draft, especially when you have as many holes as you already have. 2. We're
I was thinking trade down.
Yeah. And then 32, where we're at, it's like it seems like you're going to miss out because usually there's that run in the teens on wide receivers. That's really when you see it, and you feel like you're going to miss out on, a pretty high level guy. Now, luckily you have 32 and 34. Which guy do you kind of see being available in this situation that you would kick the wagon on? Obviously, depending on who's still there and at other positions, but which ones do you kind of look at and be like, yeah, I would take them if they're there, let's say at 32?
I mean, 32 is not much different than 34, right?
I guess where's your cutoff? 32, 34, where is it like, yeah, that's too big of a reach for me, or these guys are long gone, so like there has to be somewhere in the middle, a few of your guys, right?
If Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams, and Chris Olave, if any of those guys are there at 32, I want them. They have the speed, the overall athletic ability, the height that makes a big difference on any offense. I think they would be huge targets at 32 or 34, both of them.
So that basically eliminates your top 4, let's say, right? Treylon Burks, Jameson Williams. That was 1, that was 4. So is David Bell worth taking at 32, or is that that's where your cutoff is and be like, that's too big of a risk or too big of a reach at this point?
I think there's, in my mind, there's no way David Bell is going in the first round. I don't see it happening. So if you want to take him in the first part of the second round, I'm completely fine with that. If he slips to the third round, you trade up if you need to go get him. Like that would be a steal in the third round.
Gotcha. John, I mean, are there any wide receivers that stand out to you in this draft that you're like, man, I want that guy to learn a lot about golf? I feel like we need another piece. We need someone of value, right?
Well, last year I was screaming for Jamar Chase to fall to 7 for Detroit to draft because I knew he was going to be a playmaker. But if I did, I guess I mean that was huge. Not to knock on what Penei Sewell did for us at 7, on the offensive line. But I think of a guy like, I don't know, I just look here like number 4, Chris Olave. If he falls, if he slips, you get him at 32 for sure. Yeah. But again, I don't think Detroit needs to be drafting a wide receiver with their second overall pick. There's other needs on the team. So I think you gotta just grab the best prospect available at that point. Any guy with size and can catch the ball because we need weapons around Jared Goff.
Yeah, I feel like you address wide receiver at your second or third pick. That's where it looks to me. It seems to be you'll still get a valuable guy that will be good as long as there's not a huge run. Like obviously from a Packers perspective, you want a wide receiver, right? Like I mean, say everything's lining up the way you want to. Rodgers resigns. Let's say you guys find a way to get both him and Devontae Adams. You still need another piece. That's kind of been the argument in a lot of ways for Aaron Rodgers. Frustration of not giving me another weapon. Which wide receiver stands out to you that you would be like, yeah, let's take him at, what are you guys, 24, 25?
Yeah.
Since you lost in the first round?
I think we're, I don't know, like the right spot would kind of scream Jahan Dodson for me.
Yeah.
I like the way he plays. I like his size. But that's just from an outsider's perspective. I haven't done a whole lot of research on these guys. But, yeah, Jahan Dodson is someone who stands out to me.
Yeah, I think 32 or 34, I'd be okay with that. But again, I would be okay with passing again on a wide receiver because I could see you getting a George Pickens in that third round, and that to me, it's like that he's got a very high upside, and that's where I'm just looking at it. I'm like, if we can wait and still get, let's say, a top 10 wide receiver in this draft, let's just stick with Ryan's top 10 or Pro Football Focus top 10. I'll be okay with that. I feel like that is a massive upgrade for the Lions. And look, we're not going to get too deep into it, but like you still got free agency too that can address a number 1 wide receiver. So maybe you get the number 2 wide receiver, and then Amon-Ra St. Brown becomes your number 3. Like, that's kind of where there's other ways to do it. Where again, number 2 overall, heck no. If you can trade out of the top 10, trade down, then I'm looking at it and being like, okay, who's available? Which one really stands out? I'm also very interested to see what kind of fall Jameson Williams can have with the injury, because usually you're not going to get, mid-round teams that are like, all right, let's take this guy, and then might not have him for the first 8 weeks of a season, when those 8 weeks of the season are so important to that specific team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like a Jameson Williams, if he doesn't get picked by a top 12 team, that's when he could go in a free fall and be like, all right, now you're looking at early second round. You know what I mean?
I think what's interesting about Jameson Williams specifically is coaches might fall in love with his toughness too, which might sound weird because he didn't even play at Ohio State, but he goes to Alabama, and not only is he the most dynamic wide receiver, but he also was thrown out of a game for targeting, and he also played special teams for them too, like as a gunner. So he seems, and he hit some guys pretty hard too. He seems to play with a toughness and like a recklessness that coaches love. Maybe that comes with injuries long term. So yeah, that is an interesting one to watch. Jameson Williams, absolutely. I think Chris Olave, there's a really good chance that he actually falls in this draft, especially if his 40 time is not elite. And so as far as the combine coming up and who could be impacted the most, Garrett Wilson, he might run slower than people think. He actually might drop down my rankings once I see his 40 time. Chris Olave has a lot. I think he could actually bring his value back up if he runs one of the faster speeds for wide receivers. Drake London could plummet if he runs a 4.6. And then other guys like Jahan Dotson, if he is the elite
burner,
speed, Treylon Burks, all those guys, if they put big time 40 times out there, that would change them because they've produced, they've done everything else. Especially even like David Bell, if David Bell can run a 4.3 something out of from a miracle or something like that, that would change everybody's perception of him, which was
skyrocket.
Which was the reason that was and I'll go back to Justin Jefferson. He ran like a 4.38 40 time, and nobody expected it. He was supposed to be a 4.5 guy. He was out there and runs in the 4.3s, and everybody's like, well, I don't know, I'm not sure anymore. But it's like, yeah, he had elite athleticism. You guys just didn't buy it at the time. He had the toughness to go along with it, and turns out he was the best wide receiver in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when you mix their production to their elite type of traits that you'll see it with the 40s, maybe the vertical jump, broad jump, and all those, we can start piecing some things together and who's a pretender and who's a legitimate asset.
The Sky Moore in the top 6 is very interesting to me. I feel like they're ahead of the ballgame because I feel like everybody's kind of fallen in love with the idea of this guy, at least in the state of Michigan, that know a little bit more about him. He seems to be like the one that could go to this combine and just off the chart speed and be just like I think he could be one that other outlets are starting to pay attention to. The Mel Kipers of the world that don't really pay attention and just all of a sudden pay attention after the combine. Like he'll be the darling of the combine. You know what I mean? And then you see him in the top 6 of the other quote unquote draft experts. You know what I mean? And then I'm also very interested in Justin Ross from out of Clemson. Obviously without Trevor Lawrence and the terrible quarterback that they had, lost a lot of favor. I think he got injured too, didn't he?
Yeah, he's dealt with
injuries.
So
there's all of that, but he was a big name this time last year that was going back to Clemson and was a huge piece. So I'm interested to see if he can kind of help his stock a little bit more in this draft. I don't know a whole lot about him to say why I like him or why I dislike him, but it'll be interesting to see what happens at the combine to kind of get this thing going.
3 more names. Wandel Robinson out of Kentucky. He's a really good athlete. He almost looks like a running back. Romeo Dubs, I believe he's out of Nevada, right? He played a lot over there with
oh yeah, looks like I removed that
with
one.
Carson Strong. I think he was his main wide receiver for Carson Strong. I don't know. He could rise up, I guess, if he shows elite athleticism. And then Christian Watson, I think he could absolutely become the darling of the draft or the combine if he runs in the 4.3s.
Cool.